I started this little adventure before the sun was up. I had no idea I was going to be finishing it after dark. After packing my stuff up, I headed out into the road, going east towards the Cascade Mountains, and I got to watch the sun come up over the mountains. Absolutely beautiful. On the dirt road to the trailhead, you want to keep your eyes on the road. That drop on the left is a little severe. I arrived at the trailhead at about 7:45, and already the parking lot was starting to fill up. With my pack on and my sun umbrella, I'm always the optimist, I was ready to hit the trail. Putrid Pete's Peak is a 5-mile round-trip hike, but as you'll see, I don't actually do the round trip, but it is a 5,220-foot high elevation, and it's about 3,000 feet that you're going to gain in 2.5 miles, so it's pretty steep. Iris Springs is off to the right. To the left is this little trail that leads to Putrid Pete's Peak. Because this trail isn't as frequented as others, some parts require a little bit of bushwhacking. I would say about half the trail is obvious, the other half isn't so obvious, so make sure you've downloaded a map and have it on your phone or your GPS device. I always like these early morning hikes and seeing the sun through the trees. This is one of those parts where the trail isn't quite as obvious as you might like. To mitigate the steepness, the trail does have a lot of switchbacks, but even those are pretty steep. This is an important junction in the trail. To the left will take you to Dirty Harry's Peak, to the right up to Putrid Pete's. Watch for the little sign there on the tree. It's a little round disc. It's hard to see, but that's the indicator of one way or the other. After a whole lot of steep switchbacks, you'll finally get to a point where the trees start thinning out and they're shorter, and the hike becomes more of a scramble over rocks as you head up towards the peak. At this point, I was beginning to have doubts about being able to get back down the trail. Climbing up boulders like this with a prosthetic leg is doable. Coming back down, very tricky. Behind me you can see Interstate 90 as it wends its way up to the mountain pass. Finally, the peak came into view, motivating me to continue on, despite how steep this climb was. I finally made it up to the peak and took in the view. As I ate my lunch, I gave some thought about how to get back down. There's a trail that runs along the ridge line there. It's not an official trail, but it would serve to get me to the Mount Defiance trail, which would take me to Mason Lake Trail, and then finally back to Iris Springs. I decided to go for it. This was a little risky, but in my judgment, less risky than trying to go down that boulder field with my prosthetic leg. This isn't as much of a trail as it is a path that it looks like people at some point may have walked along it. I took my time and was careful with my footing because, as you can see, it's a long way down. My initial optimism regarding the weather proved true. And so, with the sun coming out comes the sun umbrella with it. One nice thing about this ridge trail, the view is fantastic. Eventually, the unofficial trail starts to look a little more like a real trail, and it allows you the time to kind of relax and take in the view. As you get closer to the Mount Defiance trail, you'll find yourself in more and more trees, and some parts of the trail are a little bit sketchy, but not that bad. And of course, you can't beat that view. When I made it to the Mount Defiance trail, I began to notice that the tree shadows were getting longer and longer. Along the trail, I took a break once in a while to take in the view, and if I'd had the time, I might have taken this junction here to the left and gone up to Mount Defiance, but I was starting to run out of time. Mason Lake was still a few miles ahead of me, so I started thinking about alternatives to try and cut some time off the trail. When I reached the Mason Lake Trail, I started thinking about the old Mason Lake Trail. It's no longer maintained, but it would take several miles off the trail, and that sun was getting pretty low on the horizon. At this point, the idea of going down the old Mason Lake Trail was looking better and better. It would have been nice to spend some time at Mason Lake and relax for a little while, but I really didn't have the time. So when I reached the old, unofficial Mason Lake Trail, I decided to take it. This trail is no longer maintained, but so many people use it that it's in pretty good condition. As the sun reached the horizon, I knew I was going to be hiking back to the trailhead in the dark. And hiking along parts of a trail like this with all these roots in the dark, very tricky. Darkness falls quickly in the mountains. So hiking in the dark on an unmaintained trail, how do you know which is a trail and which is not? Well, this is not a trail. All those sticks there indicate that it's not being used. This part over here, where it's clear, is maintained by people walking across it. I finally made it to the Iris Springs Trail, and things became a lot easier. Crossing this little bridge told me I was close to the trailhead. And this is the junction where I started the Putrid Peak Trail, right along there. And to my left, the trail that would take me back to the trailhead and my car. Arriving back at my car was a huge relief. I was tired and achy, but I'd made it.